All right, everybody, hello and welcome back to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, where we prefer truth over narrative and principles over politics. So I've got another really sad and infuriating story for you guys today. But before I get into it, just want to remind you to share this episode, please, especially for this story. It needs to get out there. There needs to be more eyes on it. Also, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so that way you'll be updated whenever I upload a new episode. Also, if you want to support my work, check out my Substack at libertychasers.com. My Substack is called Chasing Liberty. I put a lot of articles on there about liberty. I highlight a lot of local and state level stories like this one. So please become a subscriber. That helps me quite a bit. And it's not too expensive to subscribe for a year. It's only $50 and you support my work. It's wonderful. All right, so without further ado, let me go ahead and get into this. So I have highlighted now 3 of these stories. I did 2 previously, and it's all on the same subject of Georgia's Division of Family and Children's Services, which is basically the state child protective services agency. And what they've been doing is essentially they have been kidnapping people's children under false allegations of child abuse. Now, I know that this doesn't just happen in Georgia, but it seems like Georgia in particular has a huge problem with this. Like I said, I've already covered 2 other stories aside from this one, and there's going to be more coming because I'm hearing about more of this going on with different families. But this one centers on the Sullivan family. We have Corey and Diana Sullivan. I wrote an article about this for Red State. It just published on Sunday, so you can check that out. I'll put the link in there for you. Corey and Diana Sullivan. So they were childhood sweethearts, and they ended up getting married at 21 years of age, but they were having issues with having children. They spent 16 years trying to have children. They were using in vitro fertilization, and eventually it worked. And they had their oldest child, a daughter named Arabella. She's 4 years old. And then they had Amelia and Christian. They were twins. They're twins. And they're around 11 months old. But while Diana was pregnant with the twins, Amelia, which is her twin daughter, her baby daughter, was having a series of health issues: intrauterine growth retardation, anemia, low platelets. They were born prematurely. Now, Christian was more healthy, but Amelia not so much. Even after she was born, she had to spend several months in NICU. So there was a lot of serious issues here. She was having calcium deficiencies because her body was pulling the calcium from her bones, yada, yada, yada. This is something that happens. I'm not sure how common it is, but what's interesting is that in each of these stories that I've covered so far, this has been an issue. They have various health issues when they're born. As a matter of fact, Amelia's issues were so bad that the doctor essentially told the parents that if you have a natural birth, it could crush every bone in her body. So they had to opt for a C-section, and that's how they were born. So fast forward a few months. Now this all happened. So the twins were born in July last year, 2023. And so she spent a lot of time in, like I said, several months in NICU. And then around October, the parents noticed that Amelia was vomiting quite a bit and she had a swelling in her thigh. So they took her to the emergency room, and they discovered that she had a fractured femur. But the thing is, it didn't stop there. So this is in Georgia, but the hospital that they were at wasn't able to handle this type of injury or this type of condition. So they recommended transporting Amelia to a different hospital, this one in Jacksonville, Florida. And so that's what they did. They flew the child out there. I believe it was about 2 hours away from where they live. And then they arrived at Wolfson Children's Hospital in Jacksonville, where they found 12 rib fractures. And then that's when the accusations of abuse started. Now, mind you, from the time that they brought Amelia to the hospital, it only took them about 24 hours to lose all 3 of their children. So there was a whole process here, and Corey and Diana were both kept in the dark about what was going on with their children. There was a lot of inconsistencies in what the doctors were telling them. As far as her injuries, sometimes they said, like I said, 12 rib fractures, then another said 1 fracture, and then another said a lacerated liver. And that's where I'm getting to right now. So at one point, Dr. Barbara Knox, who works at the Wilson Children's Hospital, sat down with Diana and basically accused both parents of abusing the child. Now, the accusation hadn't been made before, but Diana kind of knew where this was going because of the questions that they were being asked. Diana was bringing up issues like, well, wait, she has prior health issues, or could something have happened while she was in ICU? They wouldn't entertain any other possibility of what could have happened to Amelia. They went straight to child abuse. Now, again, this is in Florida, by the way, but Georgia's about to come back, so hold that thought. But this is exactly what happens even in Georgia with how they handle these situations. They didn't allow the parents to see any of the medical records that they had found while they were examining Amelia. They sent the father home to pick up Christian, Amelia's twin sibling, and bring her there. But it turns out that they weren't just doing that to be nice. They were trying to check and see if the other child had some signs of abuse as well, or any other injuries, which they didn't. Amelia was the only one who had injuries. So fast forward to when Barbara Knox comes into the situation. This is the next day, because they spent the night at the hospital dealing with this situation with their daughter. And Barbara Knox essentially says, she has a lacerated liver, which, by the way, I don't even know how much of this is true. And it's hard for the parents to tell because they wouldn't allow them to see any of the x-rays or anything like that. So Barbara Knox says, well, the only way this could have happened, and this is how Diana told me it happened, how she said this, the only way this could have happened is if somebody would have held the baby up like so and punched her, held her by her arm and punched her, or like kicked a field goal with her across the room, or drop kicked her across the room. She used the word drop kick. First off, I'm like, what kind of doctor would say something like that to a mother? Like, even if they were guilty of this kind of thing, you don't use that type of language. It's weird to me. But again, they wouldn't entertain any other possibility, even after the parents explained exactly what happened when Amelia was born and the issues that she had experienced from there. So later in that day, Diana was feeding Amelia, and one of the nurses came in with an armed officer, and seized the baby from them, took her baby from her arms. And then the family went back to Georgia, and eventually, and again, this is all happening within 24 hours. So they go back to Georgia, and DFACS, which is the Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services, they took over the case. So Amelia was transported to Georgia along with Christian, and all 3 of their children, including Arabella, the 4-year-old, were taken from them and placed into foster care. Corey, the father, was arrested and charged with aggravated battery and cruelty to children. Now, it doesn't sound like they have pursued prosecution yet, as far as what I know right now. That could be in the offing, or maybe it's something that they'll dangle over them just in case they fight too hard. We don't know, but again, I've seen this before. During the first hearing, now this hearing was intended to determine what would happen with the children, whether they would be reunified with their parents, placed into foster care, or with a relative, things like that. And again, this story mirrors exactly what I've seen in previous stories, like with the Hernandez family. Same thing. They weren't able to see their child's records, at least the ones that were collected when they first brought them in. And the prosecution relied on state experts who hadn't even examined the child. They just went off of what the doctors in Florida said. So they all, of course, affirm what the other one says, right? There's no real examination. There's no real critical thinking here to try to get to the bottom of it. No interviews with the parents to find out if Amelia had other issues. Now, on the Sullivan side, they told the court about what happened with their child. They gave medical records, and I got to see these medical records, and the doctor very clearly says They list off a series of issues that Amelia had while she was in the womb and outside of it. The calcium deficiencies, all the things that could result in bones being broken without there being abuse. But the court didn't listen. Not only that, they didn't even allow the family to get independent testing on their own. They limited that because they wanted to go to a geneticist to test for a bunch of different health issues, even beyond the ones that they knew about. But the court, they said, well, you can only take it to somebody who we approve of course, and it can only be limited, the testing can only be limited to what the doctors in Florida said to test for those things. So obviously they're trying to play the game and tilt the odds in their favor of being able to win against this family, which is absolutely disgusting. These parents did not abuse their children. Again, I saw the records, and you can see where the doctors were pointing out issues that could easily have led up to this and even said that it could have, but the court ignored it. This happened with the Hernandez family as well. This has happened numerous times where the state of Georgia will essentially drum up false allegations of child abuse and then ignore any evidence to the contrary and use that as a pretext for kidnapping these children and placing them into foster care. Amelia has a documented history of health issues. The geneticist that they had gone to previously had actually testified about the demineralization and the growth retardation that Amelia experienced. But they wouldn't listen to that. They weren't able to admit those. So the investigation was obviously biased. This is a situation where they already came to a conclusion, and so they collect whatever evidence they can to back up that conclusion. They had the end in mind when they began this. And this is happening to a lot of different families. I mean, there's issues that I don't even know about. I spoke briefly with an attorney in Georgia who handles these types of cases, and she says it happens all the time. And they put these children into foster care. And why? Well, they get money from it. Now, I don't know exactly how much money they get from it. I'm going to be doing a deeper dive investigation on that alone, because that's the motive right there. This isn't about safeguarding children. This is about getting more money, getting more funding. And they're using these children to do it while ruining the lives of their parents. Now, the Sullivans are still fighting this. I'm not sure exactly where the fight is at right now, but we're doing everything that we can to highlight what's happening here. But I'm telling you, there's going to be more of these stories coming up. I'm going to be writing about them. You may have even seen You Are the Power, which is an organization started by Spike Cohen that deals with a lot of local and state level issues when the government is overstepping its boundaries. They've been highlighting these cases a lot. So I've been communicating with them quite a bit. And so we've been working to expose this stuff. And here's the thing. I mean, they've tried to get the attention of Governor Brian Kemp and other high profile politicians in that area. And so far, there's only been one who has actually listened and or I don't know if they actually listened to You Are the Power, but they may have done this investigation before. But Senator John Ossoff, Democrat, Georgia, he even discussed an investigation finding that the way this system is run is 100% corrupt. Again, they are kidnapping children. See, the thing is, I use the word kidnapping because if you or I did something like this, we would be arrested for human trafficking, and rightly so. But when the government does it, it's something different because they can do it pretending that they're protecting children. They do it under the guise of trying to safeguard abused children, when in reality, they're not. There's something deeper going on here, guys. And I want to find out what it is because it's important. It's obvious that Georgia's Child Protective Services unit is corrupt. There's something wrong here, and people need to know about it, especially if you live in Georgia or if you know people who do. So I'm going to be digging more into this, but I wanted to tell you about the Sullivans because it's a tragic story. And, when I talk to these parents, like Diana and like Matt Hernandez and others that I've spoken with, it's heartbreaking. Like, imagine if you're a parent and you just take your child for a doctor visit because maybe they have a rash or something, and then next thing you know, the government has kidnapped your child. It's absolutely awful. It's one thing if it's a non-governmental person doing it. That's a criminal, and law enforcement's going to go after them and hopefully catch them. But when it's the government, it's different. When the government is a criminal, which it usually is, it is much harder to hold them accountable and get them to stop doing what they're doing. But it's not impossible. If we put enough eyes on this, if we put enough pressure, if we get to the right people, maybe we can do something about this. We are not powerless in any situation where the government is abusing people. We are not powerless. So that's it for now. I'll have more of an update on this situation and the others that I'm going to be writing about. Stay tuned, and until next time, see you on the flip side.